Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, where Major League and Minor League athletic trainers share insight into athletic training at the highest level. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Dave Yeager, the Assistant Athletic Trainer for the Milwaukee Brewers. Enjoy the show. All right, Dave, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. We're really happy to have you on for our 20th episode. To get started with this being a PBATS podcast, I would love to get your thoughts about the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, also known as PBATS, how the society has grown, how it shaped you as an athletic trainer, and overall just how it can be used as a quality educational resource for students and young professionals.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Sam. It's an honor. PBATS for me, first and foremost, it's a community, right? Like it's a group of people who live the same life and understand the experiences and the ups and downs of the season. And it's like a big, large support group for those of us that are in the game. But as you said, it's an educational, it's an educational society. Its primary mission is education, and both for those of us that are in the game of baseball, but also those that are aspiring to be, or those that are outside the game and work with, throwing athletes or overhead athletes or baseball players at the collegiate or amateur levels, and it's just it's a group of folks that are just interested in moving those areas forward.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. All you guys, all the men and women involved in PBATS are really passionate about growing the profession, and that's kind of where everything stems from. But Dave, you're currently in your 12th year as an assistant athletic trainer with the Milwaukee Brewers. A really great career thus far. We'll get into your career path, your day-to-day duties with the Brewers, and some other really interesting stuff that you're passionate about soon. But first, I want to share with our listeners some background information about you. So let's take it back to the beginning. Tell the listeners where you're from, were you into sports growing up as a kid, and also where you found your passion for what you do every day in athletic training.
Well, the where I'm from question is kind of funny. My family is from Alabama. My parents are from the Birmingham, Alabama area. That's where we called home. But my father was a career naval officer, so I grew up all over the place. I was actually born in Norfolk, Virginia, and every 2 years or so we moved until I got to high school, and we lived just on the Maryland side of Washington D.C. for until I graduated high school. But my parents lived there until my father retired when I finished college or so, or a little bit after. So I'm kind of a nomad, I guess, where I'm from. But sports wise, I tried a little bit of everything. I played soccer as a youth. I loved playing baseball, but I gravitated towards tennis. So by the time I got to high school, I played the junior tournament circuit in the Mid-Atlantic area, and so that's kind of where I found my passion for both sports and sports training, as well as some athletic training stuff. I had the typical story. We all had. I think if you thought back to many of your guests, and as I talked to other athletic trainers, we were all kind of athletes, and we all had injuries, and those experiences kind of led us towards this field a little bit. But my early interest was actually in strength and conditioning. I loved the training aspect of what I did as a tennis player, and to the point where, my senior year in high school, I decided I was going to take the winter tournament season off, and I really never picked up a racket again because I just didn't miss it. But what I missed was the training stuff, and so I went to the group that used to that I worked with and used to do my physical training. and asked if I could shadow and hang out and learn from them. And one of those, the guy that ran that group, his name was John Philbin. He used to work with the Washington Redskins, but he's also been a strength and conditioning guy in Major League Baseball with both the Nationals and the Padres now. He ran that company, and he and his group took me under their wing, and I just kind of developed my passion for training then. And as I went to school, I knew I wanted to do something in this field. So I took a resume. This is in the early 90s, and I took a resume to the weight room at the Coliseum at Auburn University, and I said, hey, my name's Dave Yeager, and I think this is what I want to do for a living. And they hired me as a student strength coach, and right down the hall was the athletic training room. And I said, hey, I walked in there with another resume and said, I think I might be interested in doing this. And I became a student athletic trainer at the time. And, my first week on campus, and, I just kind of fell in love with both of them. And after my first year in school, they made me pick one. And because I already had a kind of a background in the strength and conditioning stuff from when I was in high school, I wanted to dive more into the medical stuff, and just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, like you said, so many of your colleagues and our guests have either cited an injury or walking into the athletic training room once and then just falling in love. So it's super interesting to see how you all get your start and get your passion. Speaking of your start, you've been with the Brewers for more than a decade and have spent a lot of valuable time in baseball, really huge accomplishment for you. We know everyone needs to get their start somewhere in baseball. Can you talk about the early days in your career and share with the listeners how you broke into the game and got your start?
Yeah. So I started out, I was in a clinic in South Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, the Houston Sports Medicine Center. I was their outreach coordinator, athletic training coordinator. I kind of oversaw some of their performance enhancement stuff that was going on at the time, and oversaw their athletic training kind of sports medicine outreach programs. But I also had a patient load in the clinic, and I worked. Columbus was a target-rich environment for baseball players, so Columbus High School was a perennial state champion. Columbus State was a D2, powerhouse in baseball. Across the river and at Phoenix City, Alabama, they had just won the Little League World Series at that time. There was a lot of, there was just a lot of former college pro guys that lived in the area, and so they trained at the clinic. I worked with them in the clinic a lot. The Indians, now the Guardians, had an A-ball team in Columbus too, and so when they had guys that were injured and didn't travel, they left them back, and I did a lot of clinical rehab for them. Kind of worked with them. I worked. Rick Jameson was the athletic trainer with that team at the time, who went on to be the head trainer with the Red Sox later in his career. I did that for a few years, and after a while, Rick and some of the folks at the Indians said, "Hey, we like what you do, and we want you to come see what we do." And then the year was 2000. They invited me to Winter Haven, where they were at the time, and to spend a couple weeks and kind of blend in with their staff and get to know folks. And so, there were guys like Nick Paparessa and Todd Tomzik were there at the time, and Teddy Blackwell. Just a good group of guys that just kind of let me kind of hang out and join in. And so I spent 2 weeks with the Indians, and I left. I got home, and I told my wife, "This is too much fun. I got to do this full time." And so, the next fall, when the next hiring cycle, I started looking for baseball jobs, and I ended up working with the Arizona Diamondbacks in A-ball in 2001. I spent 2001 and 2002 with their A-ball team in South Bend, Indiana. I had a young kid. The baseball life is taxing if you're not used to it. So I got out for a year, but just missed it. I was doing some performance enhancement stuff again in a clinic and a fitness center area, working again with a lot of baseball players. And once you get that baseball bug, you just can't get rid of it. And I went back to work with the Red Sox as a assistant minor league coordinator, based out of Fort Myers. And so I got there to start spring training, and my father got sick, and so I just had some family stuff, and I unfortunately kind of just said, hey, like I can't do this. So we've got some family things going on, and I stepped away, and really felt like that was probably it. You get out twice and you probably don't get many other chances. But a buddy of mine that I worked with the Diamondbacks called me the next year, and he said, hey, the Brewers have a AA position that's right there in your hometown where you're living. My wife and I lived outside of Huntsville, Alabama then. And so I talked to my wife, and we did a little bit of soul searching, and it's like, hey, if you get back in, you're getting back in, and so I remember it pretty vivid. On a Monday, I sent my resume to Frank Neville with the Brewers, and Monday afternoon he called me and we talked a little bit, and Tuesday we talked a little bit, and Wednesday I talked to Roger Kaplinger a little bit, and then Thursday they offered me the job. So I spent 5 years in AA with the Brewers and 2 years in AAA, and then my first year here in the big leagues was 2012.
Yeah, that's quite the interesting ride you've been on. I know, like a lot of your colleagues, it's not always a straight line from getting into minor league baseball to major league baseball, but clearly persistence is key for everybody in the profession. One thing you mentioned, what I find really interesting, is the kind of the family tree that a lot of you athletic trainers come from. You mentioned Nick and Todd and a lot of people who worked under Rick or Lonnie Soloff in Cleveland, which is really cool to see as that grows. You've also worked with a ton of accomplished athletic trainers throughout your career. Just to name a few: Roger Kaplinger, recently retired from the Brewers; Dan Wright, formerly with the Brewers; Scott Behringer, who's there now with you. But when you were breaking into the game, like you mentioned, was there a specific role model or someone who really showed you the ropes around the training room and kind of taught you how the game of baseball works?
I can't deny the mentorship that I got from Dan and Roger, and now working side by side with Scott. For sure. But, when I first got into the game, Paul Lessard was the head trainer in Arizona. But I also tried to learn a lot from my peers, the ones I worked with, in the training room on a day-to-day basis. So, back then, AAA was a guy named Greg Barber, Dale Gilbert, who's in the big leagues now with Paul, and Washington was the AA trainer, and then our coordinator at the time was Greg Latta, who came over from the White Sox, and we just kind of shared a similar philosophy, a similar kind of integration of strength and conditioning and athletic training, and I just from a day-to-day basis, like I just try and pull stuff from my peers. When I got to the Brewers, Jeff Paxson, our AAA trainer, was the guy that kind of showed me the ropes and told me how things worked, around the Brewers and how to navigate stuff. And we just developed a really good friendship and professional relationship. And then through the years, again, you've got guys like Aaron Hoback, who's now with the Phillies. I got along so well and worked so well with the strength and conditioning coaches that I had over the years, particularly guys like Eric McMahon, who's now at the NSCA, Andrew Emick, who's still with us, our current strength coach Jason Meredith, and former Josh Seligman. You just work together and integrate because our jobs are so similar. And both those guys are also athletic trainers. So we're able to speak the same language and communicate, back and forth. And, you just take a little bit from everyone and it gets blended into what you do.
Yeah, that's so true. You kind of take a bit from each person you work with along the way. And now that you've been in the big leagues for so long, you're one of the most established athletic trainers in the game. Roles are a bit reversed from when you first got your start. So I'm wondering, is there a certain piece of advice that you would give to college students or young professionals who are looking to break into athletic training in professional baseball, whether that's a specific skill, a personality trait, or a characteristic that you find really important in younger athletic trainers?
Well, I think first and foremost is work ethic. I don't think students fully grasp sometimes what the day-to-day is in athletic training, particularly like in the traditional setting or like what we're in professional baseball. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You're always working. You're always on call. There's always something to do. Even in the off season, we just call it a season without games because you're basically just preparing to help build your roster and preparing for spring training in the coming months. So I think work ethic and kind of just having an understanding of what you're getting into within the profession is important. The other thing that I talk to students about a lot is it's one thing to have knowledge, it's another to be able to apply that knowledge. So my advice for students is to get hands-on bodies, is to get experience, to get a feel and an understanding of what good tissue feels like, what bad tissue feels like, get a feel for, just applying your skills instead of just being able to demonstrate your skills. You need to be able to use them. And that's how you build competence and proficiency, just being able to connect the dots between what you know and the athlete in front of you. So that means for me, I look for, kind of a demonstration of kind of that growth mindset and, never stop learning and never stop exploring and just kind of keep growing.
Yeah. And speaking of growing, that's a good segue into this next question. Baseball is changing so fast. So is athletic training and sports medicine, specifically the size of the athletic training and performance staffs that you guys work with every day. Now, you've been around the game a long time. You've seen the days when staffs were maybe 1 or 2 people doing everything. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on the evolution of the athletic training staff and the size across baseball, and also how that benefits those working in the game.
Yeah, it's been quite a boom. When I got to the big leagues, it was really just the 2 athletic trainers that traveled and a strength coach. And like you said, it has grown tremendously. Where our medical team now is such a high performance feel to it. That includes sports science and nutrition and sports psych. We also travel with a soft tissue team that helps us with recovery and soft tissue work. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Luke Logan and his group. And it's really amazing how it's grown. And it's such a well-rounded umbrella of services, because that's what this is a service industry, and trying to be there to promote and optimize each of our athletes' performance every night. And so, when we're able to provide all of those things under one roof, there's no need for anyone to go outside. Our organization is truly a one-stop shop, and we carry that down even on a smaller scale, all the way down to our player development, where the minor league athletic trainers used to be the one guy that also did, clubhouse stuff and, loaded the bus. And, we still do that, because we're a helpful group and want to make sure things get done and done right. And, but we also now staff our minor leagues with, 2 athletic trainers and strength coaches and so forth at every level. And our sports science group travels and communicates and integrates and collaborates with all of us at each affiliate.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned about a bigger staff is the growth and the education and keeping everything under one roof. And I know you more than anybody are more passionate about the educational component within athletic training than anyone I know within PBATS. Specifically, you chair the internship committee for PBATS. A lot of our listeners are likely looking to get into baseball as an athletic trainer or potentially land an internship for their first job. Can you talk a bit about the PBATS internship program specifically and share with any potential applicants who might be listening the benefits of applying for a PBATS internship?
Well, I think, well, thanks for bringing that up, because you're right. I am extremely passionate about this. I mean, my undergraduate experience was basically a 4-year internship. As it was a work study group, back in the old days of NATA certification, or you could still do the internship route. And I'm extremely passionate about, like I said, just being able to apply your knowledge and getting hands-on experience. And we talked about characteristics and skill sets and so forth that I look at when we're for students. But one of the things that I think most clubs look at when they're hiring new staff members is baseball experience, right? So every sport, every domain is probably the same, where there are nuances and special little cultural things about each sport. But baseball is no different. And so when you're looking for new staff members, you want people who understand the baseball culture, that have a feel for the baseball athlete, that they know the sport specific demands that these guys have to go through, and so then they can step back and apply their treatment and reconditioning processes to those specific needs. And one way to do that is to get an internship in baseball and professional baseball, and that's where this PBATS program can be so beneficial for those. It's beneficial for those that are hoping to break into the game, but it's also extremely beneficial for those of us that take students, right? You continue to learn by teaching. So what's the old saying? You don't truly understand something until you can teach it, right? And so I think it's both an avenue for students and prospective athletic trainers to get experience in the game and drive their careers forward if they truly want to get into baseball. And it's also an opportunity for them to learn if it's not something they want to do. And that happens quite often as well. We've hired several of our interns in the past, but like I said, it's also an opportunity for our own membership to grow and get better by teaching and mentoring and sharing what they know with students and others.
And Dave, in addition to the PBATS internship program, which you've done such a great job with, educationally, you received your doctorate in education from A.T. Still University. You also hold a master's degree from Jacksonville State University. Can you talk a bit about why education has been so important in your career, your personal education, and also teaching those around you?
Well, so I had a mentor early in my student life, Dr. Jack Houston, who used to say, if you're green, you're still growing, and when you're ripe, you're next to rotten. And to me, that meant like there's always something to learn. And then once you think you know everything, you might as well retire, right? Because the game's going to pass you by, from that end. But I've always been passionate about continuing to, further my own knowledge and education. I had tremendous graduate assistants when I was an undergrad that would just hang out in in the training room with us till the wee hours of the night and mentor us and guide us and work with us. And so, I think I developed, a passion for that just by experiencing it myself, and understanding how powerful it is to have people that take the time to sit down with you and to guide you and to show you stuff. And so I just, have always wanted to continue to pay that forward. But I also, I just truly believe that this field changes all the time. And so there's always something to stay on top of. There's always something to learn. And I, aside from, pursuing degrees, I read passionately all the time and just kind of try and stay in the know as to what's new and be able to try and apply it so that I can help my athletes go out and win baseball games every day.
Mm-hmm. And outside of helping those athletes win games every day and bring a title to Milwaukee, with all of the education accomplishments in your career, was there a specific goal you had in mind when you started that process? I know it's a long road to your doctorate and even to a master's, but did you have anything in mind, whether that's teaching after baseball or research in the field of sports medicine or something like that?
Well, my first goal was, just how can I use this to help me in my everyday work. So I know it's an educational degree. There's a lot of educational psychology and theory and stuff that goes with it. But to me, like what we do on a day-to-day basis is basically education, right? It's coaching and teaching our athletes on how to best take care of themselves and how to best optimize themselves. And from my perspective, especially as I got into the degree, it's like you can just separate or you can just substitute teacher or coach for teacher. And then really on a fundamental level, there's not a lot of difference between motor learning and cognitive learning, right? Like the same principles and philosophies and tenets do apply. So for me, it was to help me, just kind of continue to get better at doing what I do to help my athletes do what they do. But again, I am passionate about teaching, and you never know when your last day in this game is going to be. And so, one subset goals I had was when I'm done in baseball, I would like to teach. I would like to share what I've learned over the years. And you have to, if you're going to do that now, athletic training education is a master's level program now. And if you're going to teach in those, you have to have a terminal degree to be able to do that. And so that was kind of a secondary reason for setting myself up to be able to do stuff if and when I'm no longer, in the dugout.
And speaking of being in the dugout, you've had such an outstanding career with the Brewers and also throughout the minor leagues. You're a member of the PBATS executive board, the chair of the internship committee, as we talked about. You've received many awards for your work as part of the Brewers athletic training staff. So a very accomplished career, no doubt. Is there a specific thing or characteristic that you credit, obviously outside of the hard work and dedication to your craft, that you credit for your success in the game of baseball?
Well, I will get in trouble, and I would be stupid if I didn't mention the support of my family, and particularly my wife, Wendy, for supporting me as I've kind of pursued my passions and my dreams in professional baseball. I truly believe that things happen for a reason, but a lot of it is luck, right? Like just being in the right place at the right time. And then, my good friend Dan Wright used to say you have to be aggressively patient. You just have to do the best where you're at the time, and then everything else is out of your control. So you just kind of set yourself up to be ready if and when the opportunity arises. And so I think that's kind of where I've, what I've tried to do.
Yeah. Incredibly wise wisdom from Dan. And as someone who got to know him a bit while he was with the Brewers, just a very patient and super intelligent guy. One of the best in the game. On that same note, in terms of relationships, like you and Dan and Roger and all the guys that you've worked with, relationships across the league are super interesting and within PBATS as well. Can you share a bit about how relationships with fellow athletic trainers, with the Brewers or with other clubs have really impacted your career in the athletic training community?
Well, I talked about PBATS at the beginning as being a community. It's, I think, when you really dive into it, it's a family, right? Like it's a brotherhood, it's a sisterhood, it's relationships. And as I talked about before, I learned so much from my peers, both those that I worked with on a daily basis, but also those around the league, and just sharing ideas. And those that know me know that I'm not really great at like small talk, but when we start talking about shop, talking shop and talking about that we do, like I love to talk about work. I love to talk about what we do, and a lot of our PBATS friendships are like that, where you kind of just grow and build from each other. And I can't say enough about how I just appreciate the willingness of our membership to share things with each other and help drive each other forward.
And, lastly, on a completely unrelated note, I have to ask, as someone myself who was born and raised in Milwaukee and a Brewers fan, you did not grow up in the city that you work. You're a Southern guy, like you mentioned, went to Auburn for undergrad, Jacksonville State for your master's degree. Then you end up with a long, accomplished career excuse me, in the Midwest, specifically one of the coldest places in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have to ask, how did you feel when you first arrived in Milwaukee, and how have you enjoyed such a different culture and landscape in the Midwest compared to where you grew up?
Well, I absolutely love Milwaukee in the summertime. It is probably one of the coolest places to be. The weather in the summer I have the great benefit of in my role where I don't have to live in Milwaukee in the winter.
There you
go. The majority of our players, they don't live in Wisconsin. They're scattered around. I'm fortunate enough to where my family and I still live in Alabama in the off season. So I'm lucky enough to miss those frigid, cold winters here. So I get a little bit of both, the best of both worlds. I get the winters in the South, and then I get the summers in Milwaukee. So I skip the heat and humidity of Alabama in July.
Yeah, you really, like you said, best of both worlds. You can't beat a nice day in Milwaukee in the summer, so that's great for you and your family. Dave, I know you're surrounded with an amazing staff in Milwaukee every single day. Scott Behringer, Teresa Lau, formerly Roger Kaplinger. So I want to give you some time now to recognize your colleagues and other people within your organizational sports medicine department that help you get the job done each day for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Well, you mentioned Scott and Teresa. They're both top notch. Our integration with our strength and conditioning folks is key to getting stuff done every day for me. Working with Jason Meredith and Daniel Vega are really beneficial, and we continue to do great things. Our AAA staff, again, Jeff Paxson. Our strength and conditioning coach there is Andrew Emick. Our director of player health now is Blair Bundy, and his guidance of our program now that Roger has stepped away is just continuing that history of great leadership. All of our player development staff, Nick Jensen, Matt Deal, Frank Neville, our minor league staff with Miles Fish and Andrew Staling, Benny and BJ, Jay Williams, Stevie and the Dominican, our rehab group with Brent Hester, and then our integration with our sports science group and Ryan Tibbetts and Megan Stewart. Like, it is truly an integrative and collaborative effort between all of us from top to bottom, and that it's such a good group that I work with every day.
Yeah, you guys in Milwaukee are really doing it the right way, and some awesome talent in sports medicine on your staff for sure. Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining the show. It's been great talking to you and learning more about your career and your passions in athletic training. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment we call Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions to share some insight into your favorite things about athletic training and baseball. So we'll kick it off at first base. What is your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues outside of your homeroom in Milwaukee?
Well, I'm gonna repeat some answers from some of your previous guests, but I'm a big fan of the training room in Atlanta. I like space. I like to have an open room and where we can spread out and get our work done, and so I'm a big fan of Atlanta.
Again, that's extremely popular, and you're the first one to kind of give some inside info and let us know that there's a lot of space down there. So great job again by George and the staff in Atlanta. Moving on to second base, what is your favorite MLB stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
Again, this is a repeat answer, but you can't get a better view than the bridges and the cityscape in the outfield at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. It is, it is just really cool to kind of see, especially when it's lit up at night and the bridges over the river in the background. It's just really cool.
Yeah, we had Todd Tomzik with the Pittsburgh on a couple weeks ago, and he obviously said the same thing. And I don't think, like you just mentioned, I don't think anyone could argue. Just a beautiful view there. Moving on to third base, outside of baseball reasons or anything like that, what's your favorite city to visit while on the road?
Well, I just like to find places where I can grab a cup of coffee and sit down somewhere and read for a little bit. And so I have a couple favorite coffee shops. But one of the places that I like to go is Washington, D.C., because I'll hop on the metro from our hotel and head into the Navy Yard and sit down at a coffee shop and hang out for a little bit. So I like DC. Plus, there's just so much to do there if you happen to have the time to kind of jaunt around the city a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Navy Yard area is pretty awesome down there. You can't go wrong kind of cruising around DC for a morning. Moving on to home plate, the last question for today. You've been in the big leagues for a while. Let's take it back to maybe your first year with the Brewers at the major league level. Did you have a welcome to the big leagues moment at some point during that year?
Well, I think there's two moments that come to mind. Number one is at the beginning of the year. Like there's nothing like your first opening day. Opening day never gets old. It's always a special time. But that first time you get announced on a big league, a big league field, and you're standing on the line, and you get, the national anthem and the pomp and circumstance of opening day. It's such a special feeling. The second thing that comes to mind. So back when we did a lot of rookie dress up type things. So I'm a passionate college football fan, SEC fan, Auburn War Eagle. And so my first year, our players used that to their advantage, and they dressed me up as the mascot for that other team in my grade state. And so that was when you're part of the team and you get you're included in that kind of tradition. You're like, okay, I've made it. I'm here. And so that, it was at the end of the year, and it was such a just a phenomenal experience that year. That signified to me, it was like, okay, like you're officially part of this group, part of the team. And so, that was, I think those two, but that in particular was kind of my welcome to the big leagues moment.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. These stories are amazing. Each guest we have on, and we'll make sure not to mention the other school in the state that you guys dislike so much. Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate your time, your dedication to PBATS, and also the profession of athletic training. And we wish you and your staff in Milwaukee the best of luck throughout the rest of the season.
Thank you for having me, Sam. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for listening to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, a show for athletic training students, educators, and professionals who want to learn more about life as an athletic trainer in major and minor league baseball. If you've enjoyed the show, head over to PBATS.com to gain access to other free resources. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks again for listening.